Mark chapter 8, Jesus heals a blind man. It says this in Mark chapter 8. When they arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought a blind man to Jesus, and they begged him to touch the man and heal him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, "Can you see anything now?" The man looked around. "Yes," he said, "I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking all around." Then Jesus placed his hand on the man's eyes, and his eyes were open, and his sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly. Jesus sent him away, saying, "Don't go back into the village on your way home." What I really like about this Jesus, it says that Jesus took the blind man by the hand. And what's really cool is Jesus walks with us. He takes us by the hand. He meets us where we're at, but he doesn't leave us the same. You see, when Jesus encountered the blind man came back seeing. And when we encounter Jesus, we find our healing from our sin. We find our redemption. We find forgiveness through him. And we leave his presence changed every time. This miracle is really interesting because, the man is blind, and then he prays the first time and asks him if he can see. And he says, "I see a little bit, but I see people and I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees." And then Jesus does it again, and he's healed. And what's really cool about this miracle is it doesn't happen all at once. There's a slow process before he starts seeing. And sometimes the miracle that God wants to do in your life, it doesn't look like a one and done thing, but it's a process of progression moving forward. And that's what God's doing. What's cool too is the people that brought the blind man to Jesus begged Jesus to heal him. And you see in the Bible, when people beg Christ, people beg Jesus to do something for them, Jesus usually ends up doing it. Because when you're begging for something, you're desperate, you're expressing your need. And you see, every Christian, someone said this once, we're just poor beggars who found bread, telling other people where they can find bread. We are all beggars when we come to Christ. We are humble, desperate. We're hungering and thirsting for righteousness, and then we find that Christ feeds us. And so therefore, after having eaten from starvation, the response is to tell other people who are hungry that they can taste and see the Lord is good. Another really cool account of the healing of a blind man is in John chapter 9, right? Jesus spits on the ground, makes a mud pie, puts it on the man's eyes, and he comes back seeing. What's really cool in John 9 is the man that Jesus heals, who's born blind, when he comes back into his town doesn't receive him. The Jewish people reject him because they were upset that Christ did the miracle. But he said, "One thing I do know, I was blind and now I see." And that's the truth. All of us are spiritually blind. We're blind. We're dead in our trespasses and sins. But God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive together with Christ. And by his grace, we have been saved.